Hi, welcome back to Better Informed. Today, we're going to debunk the myth that because of products on the store shelf, it must be safe. Now, this belief system is based on the assumption that there are systems in place to protect consumers, whether that's regulations, oversight, product testing done by manufacturers, but ultimately that there is somebody in the midst of us helping protect harmful products from getting to our homes. I'm going to push back on that today. I'm not going to do a blame game or fearmonger, but I just want to add context. Make it clear that just because a product is widely available, that doesn't mean it's fully understood. Now, two good examples of this would be the PFAS-coated non-stick pans, right? It was technology invented back in the 70s, if not before that, and it was great. It was made so that we can get spaceships into space. But now we know definitively that on the pan, it leaches cancer-causing, reproductive harm-causing chemicals into our foods. And yet, decades later, those pans are still widely available online and in stores. Now, on an example where regulation did kick in, you had those plastic microbeads in personal care, your face wash and your hand soap for exfoliation. Well, surprise, surprise, wastewater treatment facilities said we cannot process those beads, and they just ended up in waterways and streams. So the government stepped in and said, this is causing harm, stop. And they phased it out. Now this isn't about, bad actors or a blame game. It's just acknowledging that innovation outpaces long-term safety data, and therefore regulations only come along after harm has been caused. And that's the context I want this video to be within, because as we dive into the household cleaning products industry, the regulatory landscape and lack thereof, it's really about the responsibility we must take on as consumers to make better decisions that actually make real-life health impacts to us. So, if this is the first time you're with me, my name is Matthew. I'm a chemical engineer, and I've got a decade of experience in the cleaning chemicals industry. This series is all about translating that experience into practical guidance to help families make healthier choices for their home. Now, let's get into it. All right, so let's talk about the regulations that do exist and what their limitations are, because once you understand the actual scope of what's protecting us, it's easier to understand why certain ingredients remain while questions have been raised. So it starts off back in 1976 when the first legislation was passed called the Toxic Substance Control Act, also known as TSCA. This gave the EPA authority to require all new chemicals to market to pass a basic safety review. Not to prove that the chemical is safe, but that it's not unreasonably risky. The catch here is that the 60,000 plus chemicals already used in commerce were grandfathered in and weren't required to go through that simple review. And with respect to the cleaning industry, some of the most predominant ingredients like sodium lauryl sulfate were invented before 1976, therefore grandfathered in without a federally regulated safety review. Now a decade goes by and California passes their Prop 65 in 1986. This was great because it finally made companies tell us when they're using ingredients that are known to cause cancer or reproductive harm. Where it falls short is the fact that it doesn't require companies to actually remove those ingredients, just that they have to warn us. And that's kind of where I feel we get the whole everything gives us cancer mentality, because all of a sudden everywhere around us is warning, 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 instead of an actual regulation protecting us in the first place. Now, let's go forward decades, 30 years, 2016, and TSCA gets a much-needed update with the Lautenberg Chemical Safety Act. This gave the authority to the EPA to actually do a review of those grandfathered-in chemicals. And, of course, expand the safety review of new chemicals to market. The problem here is that these chemical reviews take time, a lot of time, And we're a decade in, and many industry experts are kind of sounding the alarm that we're not getting through this list nearly as fast as was intentioned when the law was passed. Now, a year later, 2017, California passes their Cleaning Products Right to Know Act. And this is the first time that companies are being forced to tell us what is in their product. Unfortunately, they can still hide behind some umbrella terms like fragrance or proprietary blends, which literally can hide hundreds, if not thousands of chemicals underneath that term. And so what that leaves us with is we feel like we can read and understand the label, but we can't. Health-conscious families like mine with sensitivities, we're left guessing, and companies can just continue to hide their ingredients. Now, it's not one exposure that's the issue. It's more of the constant microdosing that really adds up. Think about that, 1 to 2 year old kid, crawling around the floor that's been mopped, sitting in a high chair that's been cleaned, eating off of plates that's gone through the dishwasher or been hand washed. They are constantly being exposed to residues or direct contact with cleaning products. And recently, a study came out of Europe tracking a large cohort of people over 20 years. They tracked to see, these people who used conventional petrochemical cleaning products, they found that they had a similar lung impairment to somebody who had been smoking 10 to 20 cigarettes a day over that same time period. That kind of makes me feel like I want to panic, right? But we don't need to. There are real simple switches that can negate all of that. So it's about understanding, where do our regulations and protections end and our choice begins? When do we get to step in and ask the question, what small, informed decisions can I make to remove unnecessary exposures in my home? And that's the whole purpose of this upcoming series, where we're going to dive into the key exposure pathways that for our human body. Feel is how our skin is exposed. Breathe is how we're actually inhaling chemical residues. And then eat. How are we incidentally ingesting chemical residues as well? And once you understand these 3 pretty universal pathways, it makes it a lot easier to understand the importance and the immediate health benefits that we receive when we make switches to health-forward, eco-friendly cleaning products. So if you really want to understand what's in the products you use every day, if you're trying to build a healthier ecosystem in your home, hit subscribe, follow along, and make sure you check out our next coming videos. And if you're ready to make the switch to non-toxic, petrochemical-free cleaning products that values transparency, check out Be Better Goods at the link below. Take care.